Now we'll move to a student research presentation by Captain Taylor Hirschberger from the Expeditionary Warfare School, talking about a way to better communicate the intricacies of force design going on within the Marine Corps. So Taylor, over to you.
Good morning, my name is Taylor Hirschberger. I'm a combat engineer at the Expeditionary Warfare School. And I believe the Marine Corps has got a problem that they're currently trying to figure out. And it's communicating force design and some of the emerging doctrine and things that we're developing down to the junior Marine level. So if we can go to the first slide, please. So you can see there on the left, those are screenshots taken directly from the Force Design website. There's a lot of great information in there, but it's pretty high-level information. It talks about things like the Palm Cycle and future financial plans and strategies going forward, which is great information, very helpful stuff that we need to know, but not very conducive for the Lance Corporal. That's not information that they're going to find very helpful to them. So what I did was I wrote a short story, and The Future Fight is the title of my short story. It's a short story that incorporates these emerging concepts in an easily digestible format for the Lance Corporal. In 2016-2017 timeframe, the Commandant at the time suggested a book for all of us to read called Ghost Fleet. And those of you who are maybe not aware or familiar with the book is a fictional story that tells the story of China invading Hawaii. What's interesting about the story is, number one, it is a fictional story, but it takes place about 20 or 30 years in the future. But connected to the story were links that described the technology that was being discussed in the book. So you would read in the story, the characters would be interacting with some kind of developing technology, and then right at the bottom of the page would be an actual web link that you could put into your browser and go read an article about that piece of technology being developed. It was innovative, and it was very interesting to be able to get some more depth and information about the technology. So I wanted to do something similar for force design. Can you go to the next slide, please? So on the left-hand side, you can see an actual screenshot of my paper. Obviously, I don't expect you to read that, but what's interesting inside of that is the blue highlighted links in there. So the story, as the story is progressing, you've got your characters doing their force design, EABO, littoral combat type mission, and as they're going through it, each time we reach an important milestone or an important piece of equipment or an important piece of doctrine, those are linked directly to the source material so that the Lance Corporal then can click on that and go ahead and read where it's coming from and get an idea as to what the Marine Corps is planning for the future. The idea with the paper, it's about 10,000 words long, so it's not super long. The idea is maybe a platoon commander or a company commander could hand it out to their platoon or their company on a Friday and say, hey, why don't you read this over the weekend, and then on Monday we'll all come back together. We can do a decision forcing case or something and figure out what you thought of some of the ideas in force design going forward. Next slide, please. So the story itself begins with a blockade of Taiwan, which has been in the news recently. So I tried to keep it as realistic as possible. The two main characters in the story is a major who is in charge of the EABO, the island itself, and then the main character is a sergeant who is conducting a lot of the day-to-day operations. So it begins with a blockade of Taiwan, and one of the first things that the unit has to do is figure out how they're going to get all of their stuff and things out to the island of Lubang, which is off the coast of the Philippines there that you can see. It's a real island. It's about 8 miles long, 5 miles wide. Fits very well within the littoral construct that we've been discussing. And so this fictional unit has to go out there and begin persisting inside of the West, which is something, again, that is commonly discussed at the officer level, but maybe not communicated super well all the way down to the junior Marines. The story contains things where the characters have to deal with sustainment challenges, command and control. They talk about foraging, positives and negatives, how to do that, how to interact with the local population, how to interact with soft units in their AO. And it really builds from a tactical level and shows how the sergeant is making decisions that feed into the operational and strategic level. The final act of the book is a shoot, no shoot decision. So throughout the course of the story, they're getting more and more capabilities brought to them on the island. And at the end, you've got the sergeant who is, he's not the fire control officer for a rogue nemesis system, but he is the ranking Marine at the physical location with the system itself. And due to some electronic warfare situation from the PLAN, he is unable to communicate with the major. He has visual confirmation of what appears to be an attack going on, and then this sergeant has to make a decision as to whether or not he's going to utilize the equipment and the capabilities that have been given him based off the commander's intent that has been described earlier in the story. Next slide, please. So throughout the story, they cover quite a lot of doctrine and concepts. And again, I tried to smash as much as I could into this 10,000 word story. A lot of various different concepts and a lot of different reading levels as well. You've got 18, 19, 20-year-old Lance Corporals who haven't read a book since high school. So we're trying to get them engaged with some of these more difficult concepts. And then you also have some more advanced students in the Marine Corps as well, who you want to keep them engaged as well. So for example, the kill web article that's connected to in the book is extremely technical and covers a lot of just the very technical intricacies of what goes into building a kill web and how to do it. So that would be on the higher end of that spectrum. But then you also have articles that talk about some of the best practices that are coming out of Ukraine today. How the Ukrainians are defeating the loitering munitions using screens and things like that. And so that's discussed in the story as well. So just a wide variety of doctrine and concepts that's provided for the Lance Corporals and Corporals to be able to learn some things that pertain to their MOS, or to their job. Next slide, please. We also discuss some upcoming equipment, some current, some that's in development. You can see, again, a wide variety of equipment. Each one of these has its own source material located inside of the story. Some of this, like I said, is in development, like the M240 Lima machine gun doesn't exist yet, is coming out. But that's something that the Marines may run into in the future. And then obviously, I mean, there's stuff on here that's still pretty far in the future, like the Navy's DDGX destroyer program. Again, all of these have links, and the Marines can read more if they so choose. Next slide. And then finally, I did my best to pull from as many sources as possible. Again, not a lot of Marines spend a lot of time, especially the junior Marines, spend a lot of time reading when they get out of high school. And sometimes, occasionally, they'll come up to junior staff NCOs or junior officers and they'll say, "Hey, sir, hey, ma'am, what are some things that I should be reading? What books should I be reading? What articles, what websites should I be going to?" So the idea here was to create something of a reading list for the Marines to be able to try to stay up to date. And as you can see, there's a wide variety of things on there. And again, a wide variety of reading levels to be able to provide different source material for these junior Marines as they continue to try to develop themselves going forward. I think that's the last slide. Pending any questions, that's all I've got.
Taylor, thanks. Yeah. I'm not sure if anyone else in the audience enjoyed Ghost Fleet as much as I did, but it was definitely a nice gut check, and the story, the storytelling aspect was just fantastic there. So it's awesome that you're doing the same thing, using it as inspiration for the Marines. So I'll ask the first question, then we'll transition. We already got a couple in the queue here online. Have you pushed this out to anybody? And what was the initial feedback you got from it? Just in relation to the story.
Yeah, so the initial feedback's been solid. I haven't pushed it out. We haven't published it or anything yet. We're still trying to figure out the best medium to do that. Obviously, online is probably better because then the Marines can click on the links and go from there. So we're still trying to figure out the best medium to do that. But initial feedback from some of the field grade reviewers that have been helping me make sure that I'm staying within the doctrinal constraints, making sure that I'm communicating everything effectively, has been solid, and they seem to think that this is something that has value.
Yeah, I mean, just from an initial take, as we look at T&E 2030, it talks about asynchronous learning, self-paced learning for students, and this continuum of learning that we're trying to push for. Things like this, it seems like just a phenomenal way to add to that continuing education program throughout the Marine Corps. All right, so we'll go ahead and transition to the first question I had online. So from Dr. Joanna Sakira, so shoot, no shoot seems to be a very legal dilemma. Did your research touch upon legal advising, law of armed conflict, etc.? And if you didn't, why was that? Yeah,
it did. So there was some discussion of law of armed conflict. Specific to, so a great example was in the story, the characters drive around in civilian equipment, but they are required to wear uniforms, obviously, because they're still representing the United States, and in a combat scenario, you still have to wear a uniform. And there's an article that links directly to that, saying, hey, this is the law that is connected to deception and how you can legally use deception in a warfare scenario. As far as shoot no shoot is concerned specifically, that still is something of a gray area. And I said in the beginning of my author's notes at the beginning of the paper that there is a lot of still questionable gray areas as to what exactly fits for these scenarios. And part of this as well is to be a driving factor of discussion, even at higher levels, to say, hey, you know, this is a feasible situation that could happen, and we don't want to put a Marine in a situation where they're making a decision an uninformed decision.
Gotcha. Awesome. We got a couple online. Any questions from the audience here? Okay, sir.
So it seems like this would be a phenomenal resource again to, expose and familiarize more shooter enlisted force. Or honestly, I think higher force to a lot of these concepts that we're chewing on and trying to wrap our heads around. Did you look at any potential for this to be used as a complementary tool to enhance the educational aspects of wargaming? The presentation that Mr. Barrett gave earlier, he highlighted that one of the big takeaways you get out of wargaming is learning platform systems and capabilities. It seems like this would be a great tool that Marines read about it. They can, reference documents pertaining to it, and then they get a chance to go hear that, actually using it in a wargaming scenario. Did you consider that at all when you were coming up with this, or have you looked into that?
Not directly, no, sir. I think though that like you say, the potential is very definitely there. The idea again is to drive a discussion amongst junior Marines of what would I do if this happened to me, which is a decision forcing case, which is a very basic form of a war game. So I think it could very easily fit and could be a bolt-on or an adjustment that could be made to a war game to give it a little bit more of a personalized feel.
Yeah, and I think also, gentlemen, the opportunity is like a part of a unit PME program, like to use the story and then develop, as you mentioned, sort of like small war games or decision forcing cases, and that becomes a composite program. You make your way through the story over time, and take little nuggets and then explore those and pull it out, and force the younger Marines to actually wrestle with it and make decisions like you mentioned. That's awesome. So a question from Mr. Albert Lee. So what trade-offs were made in making the story accessible to junior enlisted? So, with the very complex topics. So what did we have to do to bring it down?
So
I guess not bring it down, but to simplify the complexity of the topics that makes it digestible.
To be completely honest, I don't think that there's a ton of complexity in the topics themselves. EABO makes sense at a logical level. It's
right.
You go to the island, you hide, and you wait for an opportunity to strike. Seems pretty straightforward. Obviously, there's complex as far as how it's actually carried out, but logically it makes sense. I think where the Marine Corps struggles is communicating that. And that first slide of the discussion points from the Force Design website is very emblematic of that for me. Again, great charts that cover a lot of information, but I feel like they're definitely structured towards field grades and higher versus the executors of these operations, which is the junior enlisted Marines. So I think it took taking these concepts and just driving them, communicating them in a format that is familiar to a Lance Corporal is what we were shooting at. So I wouldn't say there was much of a trade-off as much as just a different method of communication.
Gotcha. It's awesome. So another question came up online. So from Mr. Kristoff. So during your presentation, you mentioned many times that the current younger generation has not read. They do not read. So are reading resources the right resource?
That's great. That's a great question. I think it is the right resource for some people, and this is just another tool. So it's not the only tool. It's not the best tool, maybe necessarily for everyone, but it is another tool. I personally like to read. I would snap something like this up. Like this is something that I wrote this for myself. Effectively, this is something that I would read. So I think that there may be some Marines that will definitely get some value from this, and it may not work for some. And I think that's where the officers are going to have to engage with their individual Marines, link in the wargaming, link in the discussion points, watch some videos. That's where that finding the learning style of your Marines and using whatever tool is most appropriate is key for them to learn the information.
It's also, yeah, one thing that jumps to mind is like, you ask them to read Ender's Game and then watch the movie, which is definitely not as intricate, right? Like, it has many plot lines, but it provides provides a visual, so now they can envision as they read the book, kind of like what they're supposed to be seeing. It's a different method. And then so a follow-up, so could the short story be used as a means of easing junior Marines into the habit of recreational reading, right? And like using that as a gateway in order to promote continued reading, continued study, whereas, they may not have done it too much in high school or since then.
Yeah, 100%. And that is also the hope is, the advantage over, the advantage of the Marine Corps over maybe their high school is that an officer can say, no, you will read this, and, by Monday, right? Yeah, you'll have some discussion points. So I think that there's an opportunity there to really push that and create that opportunity. And then also, like I said, there's that list of resources and websites at the end of the presentation that describes like, hey, look, there is a wide variety of stuff out here at a lot of different reading levels. Let me find you, as the staff and CR or the officer, let me find the stuff that links up with you personally, and hey, why don't you start reading this website and you talk to me about it, and start to get them headed down that way.
That's awesome. So, Gunny Bookshot, I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Absolutely, sir.
As a member of the audience, but so Captain Hirschberger is talking about this, from a company commander, platoon commander perspective down. But I mean, even at the schoolhouses, right? Like from your time as an instructor, beneficial resource.
Right. Yeah, I think absolutely. I think you're spot on too, sir. And then I'd probably add what I've seen from the enlisted community is writ large. The scenario is usually a fires EAB, and it's a Sergeant 03XX on the deck. And a lot of the other MOSs maybe wish away some of the stuff. So this potentially could be a series of a sensing EAB and the other things where maybe it broadens the scope of, I've heard MOSs I've interacted with, well, that's an 03 thing, that I'm not going to be on the EAB. So that's what I might offer in kind of lenses and focus.
That's a great point. This one, I only had 10,000 words, so I was trying to keep it short. And fires is definitely what we all talk about. It's also the thing that's interesting to read. But there is, I'd say 3/4 of the story is logistics focused and how they actually got everything in place to be able to conduct the final exciting part, which was the fires mission.
Yeah, it's like the mission of the rifle squad. Close the last 300 meters, and it's like how did we get to that point?
Right.
Yeah, again, just your insight. That's phenomenal. Looking at cross-functionally, putting Marines in the shoes of different MOSs and their role in the whole picture. And this is just a starting point.
Yeah.
It's good. Any questions here in the audience? Got a couple more coming in online, but don't want to. Okay. All right. So, Mr. Keith Rabideau, so if hypothetically about to assume command of a company in the fleet this summer, when would be the earliest that this resource could be accessed?
I'd be happy to send it out now. It's sitting in my inbox, so I'm happy to send it to anybody. If you would like to email me, I'm happy to send it to you. Otherwise, like I said, we're gonna try to find the best medium that makes sense for publication of some kind, and then it'll be online, so you can pull it and use it. And again, this is a tool, so I want to get it out as quickly as possible.
Okay, I think that what I could offer from the Quillac Center side is the landing, which is kind of a resource, PME resource that we have in the interim, until it becomes formally published. Could be an opportunity to hang that on our side as well, and then you can push it out to whoever wants it.
We could easily, when we put this on our YouTube channel, that could be a link in the show notes, and then interim solution until you find a formal publisher.
Sounds great, sir.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Mr. Lee said thank you. Yeah. Okay. All right. So if we have no more questions, I guess what I'll just add in there is, when you looked at the different mediums, whether it's reading, podcasts, websites, were podcasts included in any of your resources, or were most of them prose?
It was all authoritative articles that could be used as like a source. Okay. So it would be very similar to sources that you would find for any kind of research paper or anything like that. Again, the focus here is driving the Marines to connect to reading on some level and give them different methods of trying to reach that.
Yeah, and hopefully, along with one of our principles of know yourself and seek self-improvement, right? Recognize a gap in knowledge that they might have that's uncovered by one of these articles. Now, hopefully they're invigorated to go read more and study more and get a better understanding.
Definitely.
Yeah, awesome, man. Okay, so if we have any more questions, Taylor, just want to say thank you. If everyone give him a round of applause. That's awesome. Okay, any closing thoughts from you?
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna take a break for lunch. Scheduled to start back again at 13:30. So a little bit of time. And for those on the WebEx, we will see you at 13:30. All right. Thank you all very much.